All characters and events in this publication, other than those clearly in the public domain, are fictitious, and any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. Copyright 2016 by R.L.Kooy. R.L.KooyBooks presents The Master of Names by R.L.Kooy. A reading by Jeanette Kooy. Chapter 3, Part 4. Drake smiled and said, "We're here. Sorry I had to put that blinding spell on you. But all new students must not quite remember that last bit of the journey. It keeps the school mysterious and all." Drake gave him a wink, and they both stepped out of the carriage into the courtyard. "Follow me and do exactly as I say, and only speak when spoken to," Drake said, a serious edge to his voice. They went out of the courtyard, and Plum noticed that the inner keep of the courtyard was completely abandoned, with broken battlements and shards of broken glass from high tower windows strewn about the floor. Plum said to Drake under his breath, "This castle looks completely abandoned. Why did you bring me here?" Receiving no response, Plum kept following Drake through an archway. Drake led Plum down a stairwell. The soles of their feet tapped on the hard stone floor as they got to the bottom of the stairs. Plum could see that there was a doorway. Drake looked at him and explained, "The school may appear like it is in the middle of an old castle, but it is just a trick to keep away unwanted attention. The founder of the school, Prolius, was able to reconfigure the reality of the rooms and space around them so that you do not enter the castle in the way that you would expect." He swung open the door, and Plum could see that there was inside a great hall with ornate carvings of great wizards of the past and torches flickering and blazing bright on the walls. Drake said, "Gets you every time. This is the Hall of Ceremonies. It's the first thing that you see when you step inside the school. Oh, come on, Plum, keep up. We need to go to the admissions office to let them know you've arrived." Drake went out into the corridor with Plum swiftly following in tow. They took a sharp left, then right, before they came to the end of a hallway. Then Drake and Plum went up a winding staircase that never seemed to end. It curled around and around like a pig's tail. After an entire hour had passed, they had ascended the massive flight of stairs. Plum collapsed into a heap on the hard stone floor, out of breath and panting. Plum complained, "I'm not used to all this climbing. I've never climbed so many stairs in my life." Drake said, "The more you use your magic arts, the less strenuous physical daily tasks will be for you. That is one of the benefits of being a magic user. Not only will you be able to cast spells, but the magic from those spells will be absorbed into your body, making you stronger and more youthful. This slows the aging process and increases your life expectancy. That's another one of the benefits. Drake smiled. He sat down, waiting for Plum to regain his breath. After Plum finally got back his strength, he asked, "Where are all the students? I haven't seen any since we entered the hall, and I saw none when we were coming up the stairwell." "Well, that is because they are in their lectures," Drake replied. "Are you okay now? Can we move on?" "Yes," said Plum. They walked along a vast hallway, adorned with suits of armour and coats of arms. There were stained glass windows embellished with colourful depictions of battles between demons and wizards. Plum could see a particularly gruesome scene of a demon's head being severed by a wizard. The wizard had what looked like light or magic emitting from a wand that he held in his hand, and he held up a sword triumphantly in his left hand. As they walked, their feet echoed heavily on the polished marble floor. They came to the end of the hallway, and Drake stopped. Plum could see a huge door with the monogram of a P on it. Drake turned the knob of the great door, and it made a loud creaking noise. As he swung the door back, they could see that the room itself was octagonal, with 2 passageways leading off either side of it. In the middle of the room, there was a woman sitting behind a grand oak desk, which had many carvings of arcane battles on it. Plum eyed the desk in wonder, thinking, what kind of craftsmanship must it have taken to make this amazing piece of art? The woman was in her middle years. She had wispy salt and pepper hair that was tied back into a neat bun. The woman looked up at Drake and Plum as if there was something that she'd found on the floor. "Yes?" she said. Drake looked at Plum, and Plum pulled out his crumpled letter of acceptance from one of his pockets. He then handed it to the lady behind the desk. She took it, quickly scanned over the letter, then she looked back to Plum, and then back at the letter, then back at Plum again. This process went on for several minutes. Then she finally said without emotion, "Wait here, please." She moved away from her station and ducked down the passageway on the right side of the room. Looking concerned, Plum said, "Well, what is going to happen now?" Drake replied, "I think she's gone to check if everything is in order for you. No need to worry. You are in one of the safest places of all of Lore." After a while, the lady came back. She looked first at Plum and then at Drake. "Follow me," she said. She led them down the passageway on the right side of the room, walking briskly down the corridor. As they walked, Plum's eyes strayed over to the secretary. She was wearing a knitted jumper made out of grey homespun. Underneath it, She was wearing a white frilly undershirt with the frills billowing down across her chest. The woman stopped in front of a doorway. The sign on it read, "Headmaster's Office." "Take your seat here, please. The headmaster is expecting you." Then she swung the oak door back and disappeared through it. Plum took his seat, waiting anxiously beside Drake, who was lounging on one of the thrones next to him. Drake looked over at him and said with a chuckle, "You're as stiff as a board. Relax a little." Plum let his breath out with a sigh. "All right," he said. After a short time, the woman came back into the room and motioned for Plum and Drake to enter the office. Plum's eyes widened as they entered the headmaster's office. The office was a large room with many books neatly arranged on the high shelves and a library ladder over in the corner. There was a small circular table in the centre of the room with a vase of flowers, books, scrolls and tomes all scattered around it. Across from the table stood a grand desk, ornately carved with depictions and scenes from the War of the Burning Hells. Sitting at the desk was an old man with soft blue eyes and a long white beard. The old man stood up when they entered. He leaned heavily on a white staff. "You like my office, boy?" he said with a welcoming tone. Plum said, "It's nothing like I've ever seen before." Plum stood transfixed by the grandness of the office. He felt a small nudge which snapped him out of his reverie. Drake appeared behind Plum and rested his hand on Plum's shoulder for a moment. Drake's eyes stared straight ahead. "Prolius," he said. Drake came towards the old man and gave him a hug. "How are you doing, master?" Prolius said with a wry smile, "Well, I'm over 1,000 years old now and still going. Everything well with your father? Still not listening to my counsel, hey?" Drake sighed. "Or still as stubborn as a mule." They both chuckled. "So, who is this fellow?" Prolius said. "This is Plum," Drake replied. Prolius scrutinized Plum for a moment. "Well, I guess you're the new student then," he said finally. Plum kept his nervous gaze on Prolius. I guess so." "It is a great honor to be a part of this school year. You will be better off than most men, and you will have a world of opportunities here that are beyond imagining." Prolius took a breath. "You will be wanted by kingdoms. Men will bow before your might, and your enemies will soon learn to fear you. This will all become apparent to you in time. But for today, I welcome you to the school. Prince Drake, would you mind excusing yourself for a few moments?" Drake bowed and said, "Yes, Headmaster."